seeing those bras and panties come from all over the gardens
Right?
up on the stage, it was like, where's this coming from?
Now you gotta remember, we're all altar boys too. We were also on the choir.
We were trying to figure out how a damn skunk got into the concert.
Right.
We all had to go to confession on Monday when we got back to school.
Right.
God.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. Online at bookedonrock.com. You can find every episode there, along with links to the listening platforms, exclusive videos, blogs, and the latest rock book releases. We have Jim Serger, Chris Berger, and Todd Zimmerman on the podcast. They're here to tell the story behind their brand new book, Jump, 40th anniversary of attending the 1984 Van Halen concert. This is the true coming-of-age story of 5 teenagers and their experience attending a Van Halen concert back in 1984. The band was at the height of their success thanks to their #1 single, Jump, and were packing arenas around the country, including the Cincinnati Gardens in Cincinnati, Ohio, on March 9th, 1984. That experience was life-changing for Jim and his friends. They experienced the enduring power of music, and they're here to share that experience with us. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
It's always great to meet fellow Van Halen diehards.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And you guys, I envy you guys because I was the same age as you, actually, around there. I was 12 in 1984, but I didn't get to see the band until 91, I think was my first Van Halen show. So I'm going to live vicariously through the three of you guys tonight. So,
Gotcha.
And I do we have a No Bozos shirt, Chris, there? Is that?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
This is my staple for all the book signings, for everything we go. I was like, I got to do this. I was worried, though, because Todd and I were at a record store this past weekend, and he's got one, too. I meant to text you, Todd, and say, hey, make sure we don't twin it up tonight or anything.
Yeah, for those not in the know that aren't huge Van Halen fans, that's a shirt that Eddie would wear, and I think he maybe wore it around that time. I think it was 1984 maybe that he...
Yeah, it was 84 because we got a picture of him backstage at the Gardens wearing this with a red jacket over top of it. So that's how everything came around, where I'm like, I need that shirt.
I love it. And I want to ask you about some of these photos too. So let's start. Well, Jim, we'll start with you. The title of the book. Let's start there. You specifically used the band song Jump for the title. That was the first song that I remember hearing. Probably saw the video first, then the song, but I could just distinctly remember being in the living room, 12 years old, seeing that video coming on, see Dave doing the splits and Eddie doing what he does. For you, that song has a special meaning?
Absolutely. So just like you explained, I was 12 in December of 1983 when Jump came out. I didn't have an older brother or an older sister that I could live vicariously through the musical influence of more older rock bands, or even Van Halen 1 or Van Halen 2. At the same time, MTV is being released in our household and across Cincinnati area. And matter of fact, across the United States, everybody was being welcomed to Martha Quinn and Jackson and everybody else. And when the video came out on January, I think the 2nd of 1984, the song was already playing through the airs. And all of these guys, Todd and Chris and all of my 7th grade buddies, were like, have you heard this song? Have you seen the video? This is unbelievable. I mean, all of us were in the right place at the right time when Jump came out. So it wasn't only just about seeing Van Halen, because I didn't know that much about Van Halen at the age of 12. I knew enough to be welcomed into the concert we were going to, but by no means was I a Van Halen expert. I mean, my dad was listening to John Denver and the Kingston Trio.
Right, same here. My dad, my mom and dad, yeah.
Right, the Beach Boys. And I can still remember to this day when MTV started playing that, my mom would come into the family room and say, who are these goofy guys? What kind of outfit is this? And then she'd say, okay. And then she would sit down, and then she became mesmerized by him. And then she started saying, oh, I know Eddie. He's married to Valerie. Oh, I've heard of David Lee Roth because my cousin's best friend's nephew's sister heard of him from Van Halen. And then all of a sudden the whole family is hunkered around watching the music video Jump. And when you say jump, the first thing I think of is Van Halen. I could be in the car. I could be on an airplane, in the airport, at another venue, just sitting outside, and someone says jump, goes right there. Van Halen. So Jump introduced me and my buddies to Van Halen. And that's why we came up with the cover of Jump, Piece of Cake.
So you guys all went to school together?
Yes,
We did.
Okay.
We all did. Mm-hmm.
So when does this story start? Like, when do you start to formulate this idea? Actually, before we do that, let's talk about the people involved. Let's get all the names here. So, because there's 6 people total, right?
Seven total.
Seven total. Okay, you and yes, 6 others. So we have Chris Berger.
Correct. Yes.
Jimmy, is it pronounced Myers?
That's correct.
Okay.
Jimmy Myers.
Jimmy Myers. Then Jim Myers.
That's correct. That's his dad.
Okay.
That's his dad.
All right. Chris Berger is here. We have Todd Zimmerman, who's here as well. Skip Berger and Mike Myers.
Skip is my dad.
Okay. He's the police officer.
He's the policeman.
Yeah,
yes.
cool.
He's the one who made everything happen for me.
Nice. Oh my God. That's so awesome. Start from the beginning. You guys are in school one day and you say, hey, they're coming around. We got to go see them. And how does this all start?
Well, do you want me to take it? Because I'm the one who didn't have a ticket, and I'm the one who kind of got left out aside with everything.
Well, we can get on. Sure, take it. Take it. I think it's great. I think it's great.
Gosh. Yeah, just like Jim said, it was all, hearing that song. And this was before, of course, anything with the internet or Spotify or anything like, you had to grab the cable box, hit MTV at the right time to see that video. And they were playing it constantly on the loop. It was probably once every hour. And then we started hearing it on the local radio stations. And like Jim said, we didn't know who Van Halen was. It was just that song just struck us. And it's like, oh my gosh. And then, Todd and Jim started talking about, having to go get tickets to go see it at the concert. Unfortunately, when all that planning happened, I wasn't involved because right away my mom and dad said, nope, you're not going. My dad worked a lot of concerts here in Cincinnati. He goes, I know what goes on in front of the stage and backstage. You are not going. You are a good Catholic boy. You will stay home. But then I hear, Todd and Jim start using my dad as the reason why they are allowed to go because, he'll be at the concert. He'll watch over us and everything. So they used my dad as a pawn to be able to go get tickets where I sat without absolutely nothing to go.
I love it. Todd, tell me about your involvement in this. When did you first find out about it?
I remember specifically we were sitting in Mr. Pearson's class, I believe it was, and we were kind of huddled around, just talking about it. Like Jim said with the video, the old joke that I say we tell our kids now is back in my day, if you missed an episode of something, that was it was gone for life.
Right?
Yeah. So if you were lucky enough to have the record button ready to go when Jump came on, you were at home just ready to hit record on that VCR and get it recorded. So yeah, same thing. I came home, I asked my parents, I said, hey, all my friends want to go. Immediately they were kind of like, yeah, not happening. The Cincinnati Gardens isn't in a good part of town. Blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, no, Mr. Berger is going to be working the concert. My dad and Mr. Berger and Mr. Serger were all really good friends. All 3 of them coached us on the baseball team. And once I sold them on Mr. Berger was going to be there, making it sound like, kind of the book said, he's going to be in the rafters with his sniper rifle, keeping an eye on us. Eventually they were sold on it and they're like, okay, well, absolutely. So,
that's the only way that this could happen. I mean, you're 12 years old, 13 years old. I mean, you're not getting into this show. That's the thing that's so cool about it, to be able to get to see the show at that age, because the only way you can go is having an adult there with you.
Right. And even though we got all our parents to say yes, we still had to talk an adult into taking us.
Sure.
Right. There was no way we were going to be allowed to go even with Mr. Berger there. So that's when we had to work on Mr. Myers to get him to take us. And luckily, Mr. Myers was just like, okay,
I love it. The baby smoking a cigarette on the album cover too. That was an issue for Chris, your mom, I think, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. When I first went to go, I think at the time it was Camelot Records or whatever was up at the mall. And luckily, the first one I bought was the cassette tape. So it's kind of shrunken down and everything. And, I told my mom I wanted to buy it. She didn't think anything of it. I had my allowance money, so I was able to buy it. But once I got home, took that cassette out, popped it in the boombox. I left the the cassette on the kitchen table. And when she picked it up and started looking at it, she goes, "That's a baby. Oh, it's smoking a cigarette, and it's got 2 other packs of cigarettes. What are you listening to here and stuff?" And that's when, the song Jump and everything. She's like, "Okay, I understand it," and stuff. And my mom was great. She probably actually said, "Okay, just don't show your dad that and stuff." And even though my dad at the time was smoking everything, it was still taboo and stuff like that. But,
all our dads did.
Oh gosh,
No, but that's kind of what's missing from rock and roll. There was some danger there. It was like the band that your parents didn't want you to listen to. It was
exactly,
which started really with Elvis and all those guys back in the day.
Right. I agree.
But a lot of that was Dave. David Lee is the guy who was just he was thinking about all that stuff. Hot for Teacher and all that.
Thank God he was wearing spandex and jumping around and his blonde locks going, because just like Jim said, that's what got our moms hooked and everything. It's like, okay, this is okay and everything like that. So.
Right. It's all good fun. Right.
Yeah,
it was.
So Cincinnati Gardens, 2 nights, March 8, March 9, 1984. So those are the 2 shows. You end up going to the second night. So how do you get, so the tickets, you have to wait in line. I mean, those days, you can't do it online.
You're absolutely right, Eric. That's the missing part in the book.
Nobody knows.
There's a missing key to everything, or, the hidden message behind the book. And through brainstorming with everybody over and over and creating the book for over a year, nobody really can figure out whose mom or whose dad stood in line at Ticketron and ran through the mall, up the stairs to the window, because it couldn't have been us.
Yeah,
there's no way my parents would let me miss a Catholic school for one day to say I'm going to get Van Halen tickets. There's no way. So somebody's parent actually darted out and ran up the stairs to Ticketron, and then to get row 10 seats, they had to have been there really early. I mean,
man, those are sweet seats, man. Row 10, right in the middle, I think.
I know, and I can tell you this. It wasn't my mom pitching a tent on the sidewalk in a sleeping bag. There's no way my dad would have done that. So
wow, so it's still a mystery. Yeah,
it is. And
it had to be somebody fast, though, and able to knock people down, because to get the tickets, didn't you have to go upstairs on the second floor,
correct,
escalator? So
it would have to have been an adult, right? Because a 12, 13-year-old, you have to show your ID.
Right. Correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct.
And this is mind-blowing. The cost of the ticket was
$12.50.
$12.50 to see Van Halen 10th row center, right? It was right.
Correct.
There's a picture of the ticket in the book too. You guys kept a lot of stuff from that show, which is great. Because then
I think it was about
that. Well, I was going to say, looking at the ticket and everything, we all know nowadays how there's all these additional charges every time you buy something. Right. I think the tax on that ticket was 33 cents. That was the only thing over it. It was like, oh my gosh.
Today it would be $1,250 for a ticket.
Right.
Exactly. Plus the 10% service charge.
$12.50 for a beer is what it probably would be.
Aftermarket 10,000.
Yeah. Someone important to the story, you mentioned him, Skip Berger, the real life Dirty Harry.
That is correct. He is the real life Dirty Harry.
He's working both nights, and at first he tells you, Chris, that he couldn't go, but it was meeting the band on the first night that changed his mind. Tell this story.
100%. He was backstage. Actually, the way everything worked out, he worked a lot of details when we were growing up, and that was, the salary of being a cop was nothing, but he made all of his extra money with working details. He was making twice as much doing the details, so he was always working and everything. One of the things that he did was always working the concerts and everything. So he got picked to do the Van Halen concert both nights, Thursday and Friday night. He was outside to begin with. And then his supervisor called him and said, "Hey, I need you to go backstage. I need you to take care of the band, watch over, make sure, do security and everything like that." And it just so happened that he started striking up a conversation with Eddie. And, at the time, we're talking about the Jump video and everything. And my dad's watching the video. He's like, "Oh my gosh, these guys, rock and roll and stuff like that." So we already had this stereotype of meeting the likes of everybody from Led Zeppelin and stuff like that.
Right.
So he's talking to Eddie, and my dad's a tough guy, really, to crack and become his friend and everything. But apparently they just hit it off, had some sort of connection and everything like that. And in the
Well, I'll
course
tell you,
of
I'm sorry to
talking,
interrupt, but you know what? Eddie loved real people.
he did.
He wanted to be treated like a regular person. So he
Yes.
probably treated him that way.
Yeah.
And
He didn't look at him as a rock star. He looked at him as a regular person.
Right.
And, we say it all the time. They both showed each other, respect. And I think that was part of the thing, that they hit it off and started talking. And Eddie brought up asked if my dad had kids, and goes, yeah, I have 2 kids. One's 12. And he said, is he here tonight? And my dad goes, oh, no, he's not here. It's a school night and everything. He goes, is he coming tomorrow night? And my dad goes, no, his mom and I really don't want him here and stuff like that. And Eddie looked at my dad in the face, said, bring your son tomorrow night. And I want you to bring him back here to meet us and everything. And then at that point, I still didn't know anything, because the concert got over, probably about 11 or 11:30 that night. My dad was still working. He actually called my mom like at 1:00 in the morning as the story went and stuff. My mom was freaking out. Something happened with my dad and everything. So even though my dad was okay with me going, he had to convince my mom to let me go. So they had the conversation. She said it was okay. And I'll never forget, because the newspaper article is in the book. I came down for lunch, getting ready for school on that Friday morning. And there was that newspaper article there talking about the concert from Thursday night. And I'm like reading this. I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom. Really rub it in. All my friends are going and I'm not. She got a huge smile on her face, said, you're allowed to go. You're allowed to go. I go, well, I don't have a ticket. He goes, don't worry. Your dad's got everything taken care of. And as they say, the rest is history at that point.
Yeah. Just to set it up too, Cincinnati Gardens, it's no longer around. Built in 1947, torn down in 2018. So just fairly recently torn down, which makes me think the Live Without a Net show in New Haven was right near, I went to college in New Haven. So that's kind of, I can relate to that. It's just since been destroyed, torn down, it's gone. This was a pretty cool venue, right? I mean, it had, going back to Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, the Beatles. I mean, this
I believe it was also, when it was built, so it was the home of Xavier basketball, right? For them to play college. And I believe it was the home of Cincinnati Royals, which was Oscar Robinson played his career after going to UC. So then it was also like your regular Coliseum, right? It had the monster truck rallies and the circus and anything else that came to town. And I don't even know what it sat. Jim, you saw that. What was it, about 18,000?
It was the 4th largest indoor venue when it was built in the United States. It could actually seat almost 11,000 people inside there.
Yeah, so 11,000 and the 4th biggest. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. But it was built at a time when the baby boomers were just starting to come to life. They had ice skating there almost 24 hours a day. So hockey was big for our parents in their youth. They used to love it. And they would have high school dances there. So there was more to it than just building it for University of Cincinnati or Xavier. The mindset behind that was, I can get everybody from everywhere within the vicinity of Cincinnati to come here, because that was one of the first venues built between here and Dayton and even Northern Kentucky and even Southeast Indiana. So you could get a lot of people there very quickly to pack the place out. And like Todd said, it was packed all the time. Wooden seats, the ceiling dripped if it was too
I was going to ask about the wooden. So it's almost like I think of the Boston Garden type of old garden.
Right. So for Van Halen to set up their equipment inside that small capacity when they're coming from LA rehearsing and they come to this little tiny thing, and for the ingenuity behind that, and the high rise stacked up speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker. I mean, I can only imagine how many brown M&Ms they had to have gone through before,
right.
Because that engineer at the Cincinnati Gardens is going, okay, we're going from hockey to college basketball. Now we're bringing in the Beatles, and that's fine. Chuck Berry, that's fine. Elvis, that's fine. But now you're going to bring in this mega rock band. that's going to blow you away with so many kilowatts. It's going to be unbelievable. I can only imagine what those guys and girls thought when they got the manual in the mail prior to setting up. You know?
That stage was so massive that it probably blocked hundreds of seats in that venue. But I read something that said they sold those seats to people. So there were apparently people that sat behind the stage that couldn't see anything, but they were cheaper, but they still sold them to try and get people in.
Right.
And I can't imagine that stage was ginormous.
It was. Yeah. And those speakers on top of it, like you said, Jim,
everywhere.
It was just, oh my gosh. And like I said, that's the first show we have ever been to. And I know, Autograph opened up, and I think they probably had 5-10 speakers, and we thought that was loud. And then all of a sudden they dropped the drape, and then all these hundreds of speakers, and it's like, and then Eddie starts out, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that roof didn't cave in that night.
Yeah.
That was the loudest thing I have ever heard before in my life.
Who's the one that put the wax in his ears?
That was Mr. Myers. Mr. Myers. Right. That's what happens when you're a dad of 8 kids. You know how to go through all the steps, right? I mean, my dad just said, good luck. Try to come home in one piece,
Right. Yeah.
He had just taken his kids to the Kiss concert before that. So his older boy. So he learned about the beeswax. And he was a pharmacist.
Right.
The Booked on Rock podcast will be back after this. Jim Serger, Todd Zimmerman, Chris Berger, authors of Jump, 40th anniversary of attending the 1984 Van Halen concert. It's on sale now. Take us back to that moment when you sit down in the seat and what's going through your mind.
Our expectations, Eric, was we were going to go see Van Halen. That was it. A one and done, like Todd and I always talk
no
about.
Opening act.
And we didn't know anything about an opening act. We had no clue. We were coming there to see Van Halen and perform on stage and do the jump and Unchained and Dead or Alive or whatever they were going to do to blow us away. And I was standing next to Mr. Myers and Mike was next to me and Chris and Todd. And when they opened it up, it's autographed and everybody's like, what's going on? This is a 2-for-1 evening.
It's the dude with the red hair.
Right. What's going on here? I mean, I don't even know. And we were blown away. We got to see 2 concerts in one night. And that song that's Autograph is famous for is
Turn Up the Radio.
Turn Up the Radio.
Turn Up the Radio.
Their drummer was buddies with Dave, and they would jog together.
Correct,
and so Dave.
correct.
But you know about the T-shirt band story? You know.
The T-shirt
So
band.
Autograph was known as a T-shirt band.
Okay.
Van Halen would pick bands that, not that they were terrible or anything, but there wasn't like, they wanted a band where people would get out of their seats and go buy some T-shirts, some Van Halen.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah, so that was just like, good band, but we don't want them to be like too good. We want people to go out and go to the merch booth and buy some stuff.
Right. But it's funny is in communicating with others about this concert, there was a guy that chimed in through Facebook and told me when he watched them play at one of the venues on the 84 tour, they played Turn Up the Radio 2 times in one set. They didn't know what else, so they just played it again. But to go with you, I mean, we're 10th row. We were the last section, so there was nobody behind us. That was a runway for the police to get the fans across from one section of the stadium to the other. So there was nobody behind us. It was almost like a exit row in an airplane. We had all this space behind us, and there they are. And like Chris said, it drops, and they came flying out, and it went so fast, Eric. Yeah. I mean, we were just in awe the whole time. And if I was a beat writer for the Rolling Stone or Cream or something like that, you wouldn't be able to write fast enough, or you'd have to record the whole thing because there's so much movement going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what welcomed me to music. And I compare every concert that I go to still to this day to that concert. I have walked out of concerts because I'm like, oh my gosh, where is the stage presence? Where
set
is
the bar high? Absolutely.
Where is this? I mean,
well, we mentioned Kiss. The 2 greatest shows I've ever seen to this day are Van Halen with Dave and Kiss. I'm a fan of the Sammy era, but with Dave, there was the show.
Right.
Right. And there's that footage of that tour on YouTube. And even seeing it like grainy and it's not the greatest footage, even that I get the goosebumps. Seeing they start with Unchained and
Yes.
Dave's up there on the drum riser. He does that split.
Yeah.
And you guys as like kids just jaw drop, right? Like, how is this guy do? Because they were like superheroes.
Yeah. And when, I remember that after Autograph wrapped up and everything, and, all the lights came on, and then they dropped Van Halen dropped the backdrop that had
The guy with the hammer.
caricature with the hammer. So that came up, and I remember us all kind of like going, what's going on and stuff. And there's all this movement and everything. So like Jim said, I can't remember it went by like that, but I guess it had to be a half an hour, 45 minutes for them to change the set and get all the speakers up and ready to go. But when that light went down in the Gardens and it was pitch black, and then all of a sudden you heard Eddie start the riff to Unchained, it was like, oh my gosh,
Insane.
what is going on here? And then just like you said, Eric, with Dave jumping off the drum set, and it just was like, oh my goodness. It was like, yeah, we were in awe. And I wish that we had an actual video of us where we were, actually can replay it. I know we do it in our minds and stuff, but just to have that moment, encapsulate it, to be able to see one more time, I would give anything.
That's the thing. I mean, is there footage of that exists in the vaults? I know Michael Anthony said everything. I think he said everything was recorded on audio and video. I could be wrong. Maybe just audio, definitely, but whatever.
I did find the actual audio from Friday night, March 9th at the Gardens, the concert we were at. I was going through some Van Halen archives and stuff, and I came across that. And yeah, just to hear that for the first time. And gosh, I just found that, towards the end of last year, so almost 40 years, and actually hearing that, because, we talked about that. Unchained is my favorite song of all time. And just because it brought me back to that moment in time and everything, but to actually hear that audio from that night, and actually when I heard it for the first time, it was mind blowing.
In their prime, late 20s, or they're around 27, 28, 29 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's like this band is from like another planet. Speaking of that, being from another planet, what was it like when you see Eddie break into this solo?
Oh,
right.
Jeez. I mean,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because he was busting out that thing where he had there was something that like he could put the guitar.
The clear board underneath him was for the waist.
And he was doing all that stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, that was incredible. He started out with Unchained. That was our first, hearing Eddie live and everything. But when he did Eruption and started that, his true solo, it was, and I told Jim this, and it's in the book. It's like every time he played the guitar solo, it's like it was talking to you. You could actually hear the lyrics, even though nobody was singing, but it just spoke to you, and him just effortlessly, stringing it and everything. It was just, absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Now when Jump plays, everybody goes nuts, right? Yeah. That's the big hit.
Right.
But
everybody still goes nuts over that.
Was Panama or Hot for Teacher, those weren't released yet? Was it just Jump?
I think Panama was there. Hot for Teacher didn't come out. I think they didn't perform that. The music video.
But in other words, were they already singles? Like, did people recognize them? Or the video? I don't think the videos were out yet.
No,
I think
the
just
Hot for
Jump.
Teacher came out after the whole
After
Monsters of Rock tour was over.
Right.
That was their last get together before Roth left.
But I think Panama was released, that video, because that was the thing that the car ride, the van ride over there and stuff. It's like, okay, are they going to string Michael Anthony up? Is he going to play the Jack Daniels guitar go across the street? And they played that, and that was awesome.
Yeah, they played I'll Wait too.
Yes,
Panama. Yeah, I'll Wait. Panama was released.
Hot for Teacher was supposedly, from what I could gather, was song number 2.
Okay.
So it went Unchained, Hot for Teacher. Panama was the last song of the set before they came off stage and then went back on for their encore. So, yes.
There was a lot of David Lee banter in between songs, too, which personally I loved. But a lot of the fans were like, you got to play. That means they could have played a couple more songs. But I always loved me some Diamond Dave. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which I want to ask you about, because so Mr. Myers is there, 39 years old. He's
Right,
a conservative guy. When Dave's like pulling the, like, whoever's throwing that shit at me, I'm gonna fuck your girlfriend, pal. I mean, like, what are you looking over him like?
I don't think you can hear it.
Go
He
ahead,
could
Todd.
hear that. That's
Go
right.
ahead, Todd.
No,
I think
I don't
what's
think you can hear
interesting-
it, honestly. I think he was
Because that was Dave's thing. He would do it every night, so he probably did it that
absolutely. I
night.
mean,
Uh-huh.
And he would point at some woman right there and then make fun of the guy next to him.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny is you talk about the dads that went there, and my dad was part of a unit. Chris's dad was a cop. Todd's dad was in the Coast Guard, and Mr. Myers' dad was in the Coast Guard. So if you rounded them up and put them in a room with beer and cigars, they weren't offended at anything.
There's nothing they haven't.
It's nothing
no,
like they
right.
haven't. It's nothing like they haven't heard any of this.
Oh yeah, but
And-
when you throw the moms into that and the wives,
Yes, then it's
that's where the
offensive.
problem happens.
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like the posters in my room. Yeah.
Yeah. But he didn't lean over and try to block your ears or
No.
Oh, but seeing
Uh,
those bras and panties come from all over the gardens
Right.
up on the stage, it was like, where's this coming from?
Right. Now you got to
Oh,
remember,
my
we're
God.
all altar boys too, and
Right.
we were also on the
We
choir.
were trying to figure out how a damn skunk got into the concert.
Right.
I mean, seriously, it's
smell?
like, how does a skunk
What's
get
that
in
smell?
here?
Oh, that's true.
I mean, it's true. It is true.
Yeah. We all had to go to confession on Monday when we got back to
Oh,
school.
my
Right.
God. Let's go backstage now. Chris, get the chance to go backstage, meet the band.
It was crazy. And you talked about, when we got to the concert, and I know Todd and Jim and Mr. Myers and everybody else, they went through the regular, turnstiles and everything with their ticket. Well, when we got there, once again, I don't know how this all happened because, there weren't any cell phones or anything. Mr. Myers parks, and all of a sudden my dad's walking over in full uniform and everything, grabs me, and Todd, Jim, and everybody else goes the other way. We go to the side of the gardens. He knocks on the door. One of his buddies opens the door, and I walk inside with him. So I'm still in this whole awe and everything like that. I don't know what's going on. I no experience with this whatsoever. And you start walking down this corridor and everything. And, you could hear people talking and stuff like that. And I look up, and there is just this line of beautiful women, Aquanet hair just everywhere, just scantily clad. And I'm just going, what is going on? I'm holding my dad's hand and everything. And I'm just like, this is absolutely incredible and everything. So, he actually knocked on the dressing room door, and he actually went back and talked to, Eddie, Alex, Michael, and Dave before I went back. I think as the story goes, he said, okay, my son's coming back. It's time to calm it down a little bit, whatever they were doing and stuff.
Right.
And I just remember walking back there, and we've seen the jump video. We've seen some other videos, and it just kind of hit me, and everything was a blur that I just look up and there's Eddie Van Halen right there. And, now I appreciate it. At the time it was just like I was just starstruck and really didn't know what I was actually experiencing at that time. And, Eddie was just everybody in the band was so nice. Everybody shook my hand. We talked for a few minutes. It felt like I was back there forever, but I think it literally is probably 4 or 5 minutes I was back there. And it was just absolutely incredible. That's when my dad actually handed them my 84 cassette tape, just the liner, the cover that was in there. So I thought that was the only thing that we were going to get signed and have and stuff like that. I was happy with that. My dad took that before he took me back to the seats. With Michael Anthony, when he wrote Chris Rock On, I still think that is the coolest thing ever. But yeah, and they all signed it so great too. You could make out everybody's autograph. So you could really tell they took some time with that instead of just scribbling stuff on, and it really meant a lot to me. And that piece is centerpiece on the wall behind me, and I love showing people that. But on that Saturday afternoon, my dad had to work again Saturday morning after the concert. When he came back that afternoon, that's when he showed me all the programs from the night with all the signatures on them. And
they're all in the
that's what he
book.
said. Yeah. And everybody's got their copy that's in the book yet and everything. And it was the coolest thing to go into school that Monday and see Jim and Todd and Mike Myers and go, here you guys go. Look at this. And it was just like crazy. You know, everybody in the school's like looking at it and everything like that. And it was
You were the rock star.
Yeah.
He was elevating when he walked through the school.
I would think. Okay.
He was walking right through there.
Okay, well, please tell us the story of there are photos here for the listening audience. So there's 2 photos of Eddie with some police officers, their faces blurred out.
Yeah, right. You never know, right?
Right.
Yeah.
One of them, Eddie, looks like he's being arrested and he's smiling and laughing. There's another where he's
got the sniper rifle. He was such a.
Oh, I thought it was a guitar at first. So that's a.
No, it's actually the case for a sniper rifle, and that's what Eddie told my dad when he was talking about signing the autographs and everything like that. He said, "Okay, I want you to take a couple pictures because I want you guys to act like you're arresting me, and then I want a picture with the sniper rifle." And it's like going, I mean, really? Are you kidding me? But that's what Eddie wanted. He wanted those pictures, and you know, like you said, Eric, just how nice and genuine, and he just wanted to be treated like a normal guy, just because you know it was just cool. And when I first saw those pictures, it was like you could see him smiling, and you could tell how genuine and how happy he was. You know, to be able to do that, especially with the police officers, because he had so much respect. I mean, back then they didn't have the massive security detail where he had all these people that were with the band and stuff. They did have to rely on the local policemen really to do the security for the shows. And you could tell he really appreciated all the help that all the police officers did those 2 nights.
The Booked on Rock podcast will be back after this. What about Val? She was there. Valerie Bertinelli, right?
Oh,
Valerie
gosh.
was there. She was there, yes. And Mr. Berger can tell you in depth. He guarded her and protected her with his life.
Nice.
What she was wearing.
Exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
even though
yeah.
she was in disguise and everything, people.
She went. Yeah, she went to
recognized
the. She wanted to get something to eat or something, right?
Yeah, she went to go to the consent. And once again, you would never think that, you know, nowadays and stuff, if you've got a performer's wife or husband or something, that they had the catering service come in and stuff like that. No, she went to go to the concession stand.
Love it.
And I think that was the point where the first connection with Eddie and my dad came about, because like, I'll take care of her, and walked her up there and got her taken care of, and you know, got her back safely and stuff. But
and people were like, "That's Valerie, that's Valerie." Like all the kids, right? They recognize her.
Right.
I forgot. So you do have the picture of the No Bozo shirt here, Chris, in the book. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you got the merchandising, the fan club form. That's the other thing I wanted to ask about. That's in the book too, right? That was something that
is correct. So Jimmy Myers, doing the interviews of this book, I asked him, "Do you have anything in the basement that you can bring with you to our interview?" And he said, "Well, give me a couple days down in the basement." So like Chris and like Todd, they had saved all this merchandise for 40 years. And there's Jimmy's Van Halen fan club form, where you can order the t-shirts, the albums, the cassettes, the autographs, the Van Halen necklace that they would put the 14K
I have that. I have one.
Okay, right. So there's Jimmy. Jimmy brings it up, and he's got it. And he brings a Memorial Day postcard that he was mailed by Van Halen on Memorial Day, saying "Happy Memorial Day, Jimmy." It says on the back or something like that. And
That's
there's a picture of them doing their rendition of hoisting the American flag. And he brings all these old concert T-shirts that he has all these years. I'm like, my land. And every time I did an interview, or I asked the guys, "Can you search the room or search something else?" they would always call me within 5 days and say, "Hey, I found another guitar pick. Hey, I found this. Hey, my mom saved this," and what have you. And the book, Eric, just kept taking steps farther and farther and farther to a pinnacle. And that's what you have in your hand after those guys went to all the depths to find the Van Halen fan club form.
How long did it take to finish the
1984.
book, Jim?
I started it in November of 2022.
Okay.
So I had to interview everybody separately because I didn't want Todd's story to collide with Chris's. So I didn't want to interview them so they could ride the coattails of each other because one word might trigger their memory. So I wanted to capture everybody individually. Then when I built the first rough draft, then I handed it back out to everybody. And then a word would trigger with Todd, and Todd would bring something new to the book. And then a word would trigger with Mr. Myers, and then he would say, oh, I need to add this. So nobody's story really overlapped. I needed to get all that out.
And
just
some
the
of these
simple
people you
stuff.
hadn't talked to in a while, right? Everybody moved
That is
on, different
correct.
lives. Right?
Right. Absolutely. So we all played baseball together. We all went first grade through seventh grade. Mike and I went all the way through high school. So it's been 30, 29, 25 years. Chris and I, probably 20 years. Todd and I probably run into each other since I moved back to Cincinnati. Every couple months or something like that, I'll see him at the gas station. But the fun part about it, Eric, is when I picked the phone up and I told them all the concept of the book, they all said, I'm in. What can I bring to it? You know, what a great story. And it's just like yourself. When you're a fan, you're a fan. But when you're a raving fan, because it brought so much joy to you, it's easy then to create a book. Because it's not really a book. It's more of a story, a memoir, a buddies all getting together. And I had to build it that way.
It reminded me of the movie Stand By Me. There's that type of feel to it.
Yeah, correct. And that's what I wanted it to be, because there's been a lot of books, numerous books and documentaries written about the history of Van Halen. Guys are experts at that, way more so than Chris and I and Todd together. And we all agreed that this moment for us was a coming of age moment of friends experiencing something for the first time. Van Halen. I mean, we weren't just going to the new swim club or a new roller coaster that just opened up. This is a pivotal moment in our lives. Like Todd said, a skunk was in the concert, women's panties being up, the F words. Nobody was just smoking Marlboro Reds, you know.
But that's a bond you guys created that's just forever.
Correct.
And it's really cool. Everybody's still with us.
Correct.
Everybody's doing
well.
You
are correct.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing well. You are correct. And it's funny, you know, Todd's vision of David Lee Roth is a samurai sword.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
And we were all at that age where everybody owned nunchucks. Everybody was trying to be like Bruce Lee a little bit. And it's funny, he comes out with a samurai sword, and there's no way my parents would let me have a samurai sword. But I had rubber nunchucks. You know, they knew I couldn't hit my head with even this big. I couldn't do any damage. But here he comes out, and like Todd said, you got the silhouette of David Lee Roth in the back of the stage, almost slow motion with him doing that samurai.
So cool. Did Al do the thing with the gong on
Oh
fire?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's all I wanted to see. That's all I was fired. Is he going to light the gong on fire?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he turned around and started beating that. I was like, oh my gosh.
It was all about Michael Anthony.
Oh, I love Michael Anthony.
He's so cool,
Just
man.
Absolutely
So
my
cool.
favorite. I mean, that's him on that bass, man.
Well, that's when Jim asked me one of my biggest memories there, and everybody says, oh, it could be Dave jumping or Eddie, which Eddie Eruption was, but Michael Anthony's solo.
Oh,
I've never felt a building shake before. He had the Jack Daniels, and we're like, no way, you know, he's chugging it. He had the little
Jack.
person bring out bring the Jack Daniels out to him. And then he chugs the whole bottle, right? Thinking back now, you're like, that had to be water, right? Because there's no way that you could do that.
Or iced tea or something to make it look
like. And then
like
he went into that solo, and it was, I mean, the concert was great. Van Halen's Van Halen, but Michael Anthony's solo still to this day stands out to me as the best part about that show.
That's cool. He would love to hear that. That dude, he was through the ups and the downs, and just was like, he waved that Van Halen flag.
God, he did.
And he still does. He still does, which leads me to this question, because he's going out on tour with Sammy. He's been with Sammy for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
To have that experience, that kind of effect, and it's with Dave, was it hard to accept Sammy in the band? What were your thoughts when you heard?
You know,
Chris and I were talking about this the other day at the record shop.
Yeah.
And for us, we saw Van Halen with David Lee Roth, right? But we were 12 years old. So we knew Van Halen as 12-year-olds would. Honestly, we grew up with Sammy and Van Halen.
Same here.
You know, our adult age isn't coming up. The second time I saw Van Halen was 1991 at the Pacific Amphitheater in Costa Mesa. They played 2 shows. We went to both. And I told Chris, I said, a little old band named Alice in Chains opened for them. Like, they're never going to.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. Yeah.
But we grew up with Sammy as the frontman to Van Halen. So I don't think we were mad about it. I don't think it really affected us. To us, Van Halen was Eddie, Alex, and Michael.
Yeah.
You could put any singer there except for maybe one guy whose initials are GC.
Oh,
But-
poor Gary.
I know. That's what this eye's about. I got into an argument about who was better, you know, David or Sammy, and then
That's
just
right,
about
that guy
Gary. And I
was
was
really
like,
good.
yeah.
I was going to say, Todd, yes, appeared with
Yeah, it was about
a
who's
black
better,
eye.
David.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, Eddie, Michael, and Alex are Van Halen.
Yep.
Put the singer there for the stage presence. You could put almost anybody there, and I'd be okay with it because I'm there to hear Eddie. I'm there to hear Michael. I'm there to hear Alex. David was great with what he did.
Yeah.
Sammy was great with what he did.
Right.
You know, that's the age-old question was who is better. It's kind of like asking a woman how old she is. You don't really do it,
Yeah.
right? Because you're going to piss somebody off.
Jim and Chris, your thoughts?
You know, at the moment, I was not upset, but I think that I compared, like I said earlier in this conversation, I have compared so many outings that I've been to on major bands, and I've seen other major bands. I compare everything to David, Michael, Alex, and Eddie. Everything compares to them because that was my first concert. Nothing will ever compare to that. I love Sammy. I think Sammy does a terrific job. As a matter of fact, he's coming here to Cincinnati this summer. I will go see him. I will support them. I love it.
One
I
of the
think he's
greatest
excellent.
voices in rock.
Absolutely. The Red
Rock
Rocker.
history, period. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to compare Van Halen from 85 on to the 84 backwards. That doesn't do me any justice. I am a fan of Van Halen. I love Van Halen. Todd and I were talking about what song is better than the other song. Well, there's great songs for Van Halen, and then there's awesome songs from Van Halen. And then there's triple platinum songs on Van Halen. There is not a bad song done, in my opinion, like Todd and I talked about. There just isn't a bad song. There's not.
No.
So this summer when they come around, I will be happy. I will wave to them. I'll say, hey, it's us in row 10. And he'll be like, okay, there you are.
Row 10.
But
For $1,000 this time.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't upset me that the band was not intact. I understand that. This is the way it goes when you're in the business, whether it be sports, whether it be music industry or just business in general. People are going to come and go, and you try to add value to that, and you're never going to replace David. You're never going to replace Sammy. You're just not, because like Todd said, you grew up, and then at a point, somebody else came in and carried on that message, and then you grew up with them as well. So I think Todd and Chris exemplify that as fans, that the 3 guys were intact forever, and there was only 2. If you consider Gary, I don't know Gary that well, but he's still Van Halen. I still like that he was a part of that history, and I'm sure he does too appreciate that. But yes, you know, it was sad, but instantly, here comes Sammy. So
Wasn't long after. Yeah. Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely echo the sentiments that Todd and Jim, brought up and everything. And I love Sammy even before, he jumped on the Van Halen, the Red Rocker. I Can't Drive 55 and stuff like that. So I was familiar with Sammy, but, there was none of that. We were still all kind of new to music and everything. And yeah, granted, I bought the 84 album. I saw the 84 concert. Then I started going back and got Diver Down, Fair Warning, Van Halen 1, and then really started to appreciate that music, and I loved it. But the thing when 5150 came out and those songs on that album, it wasn't like, Sammy took over, then all of a sudden the band just cut off. It's like, oh, we can't listen to this and everything. You still had the core, but when Sammy came in and, Best of Both Worlds and, all that
Dreams.
stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, we're back to Van Halen and stuff like that. And, I will never say one's better than the other or anything like that, but they both did incredible for all the albums and all the performances they did. And we're lucky that, Van Halen didn't fall off the face of the earth after, David Lee Roth. And, we had the core of the band, Mike, Alex, and Eddie. But, you pop Sammy in there, you couldn't have asked for a better, passing the baton, if you say, to Sammy. And some of the best concerts, I've ever been to, involve Sammy, and nothing will ever top the 84 show with Dave, but geez, those concerts, 5150 and Balance, it's just like, oh my gosh, he was great.
To that point, the passing the baton, because I was thinking about this today, and I think about Van Halen every day. So what's the difference?
Right.
I think about him every day. So, but I was just thinking about, like, what if Sammy, because the story was that when Sammy was in Montrose, I think, or maybe he just started to go solo, there was that idea that maybe Dave's not working out. Ted Templeman was having a little difficulty with Dave's vocals on that first album, and Ted produced Montrose and knew Sammy. Maybe, some rumblings, maybe we'll get Sammy. Of course, it didn't happen, but I don't think if Sammy was there in the beginning, I don't think that it would have panned out the way things panned out. I don't think his style and their style at that time would have worked. I think they were so young and aggressive, and they had so much energy and so much raw, youthful energy that Dave was the guy for that.
Yes.
And it was like the timing was actually pretty damn good, because when Sammy takes over in 86, by that time, Ed's songwriting had progressed, evolved, however you want to call it, matured, Yeah. And it was the perfect time to have Sammy sing those songs. I thought about that. If it just was maybe more meant to be.
Yeah,
I
agree with you 100%.
on that. Eric, and I'm curious what you think on this. The 1984 album was a totally different sound than Van Halen had been. They had kind of, they were venturing into the new synthesizers and the new sound, and that kind of carried over into Sammy, that kind of sound, right? So 5150, I always say, is a non-skippable album, right? There's not a song on there that you need to fast forward past. And, even Gary Cherone, I was telling Chris, Van Halen 3 wasn't the greatest album, but if you listen to Gary Cherone, he sounds more like classic Van Halen on some of those songs in my mind. The sound of it is the 70s rock sound, that feel to it. So I think they kind of were already going in that direction with 84 with David, because the sound changed so much from the previous album. And then Sammy just kind of took over with it, and they really, implemented different sounds into their songs once he took over, which had already been started with 84.
And those were the creative differences that Dave and Ed were having.
Correct.
That was
and
thing.
And his writing just became, like I said, 5150 to me is just genius.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the album that I really became a Van Halen fan on. I've said this story before. It was Christmas Eve, 1988. And my brother had the cassettes, and my friends kept banging on me. You got to listen to Van Halen. Because I knew Jump. I knew all the 1984 songs, but then I kind of like steered away. And then in 88, my high school friends were like, dude, you got to listen to this, man. 0812. That was the album that was on at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And When It's Love was on the radio, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this. And then my older brother had all the cassettes. So Christmas Eve, popped it into a cheap Walkman. And I to this day, I still remember the goosebumps listening to that 5150 from start to finish. And then I just took the cassette, put it back over, rewound, and played it again.
Right.
And I remember just listening to Dreams, and it was like another worldly experience, like especially when I did play the solos and stuff.
Oh,
and that's
then when you found out
came
what
out for
5150 stood for, you loved it even more.
Yeah, right. I know.
Kind of like the story behind OU812. It's like you hear those, and it's like that makes it even better.
I know. Well, are you guys fans of Dave's solo? Were you fans of Eat 'Em and Smile and Skyscraper?
I bought Crazy from the Heat I remember that, right? Is that what it was when he
That's
first
the
went solo?
4-song EP with California Girls. And
So I bought it, because I was like, yeah, it's Van Halen.
And Yankee
And I didn't
Rose.
really follow his solo career, but I did go see them a couple of years ago, before Eddie had passed, when they reunited with Wolfie on bass. They came to Cincinnati with David, and I did go see him. So, Chris and I saw Van Halen in '84 together. Then we saw Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. Then we saw Van Halen with Gary Sharon.
That's cool,
so
man.
Chris and I saw them together 3 times.
Covered all 3. That tour was successful, even though the album didn't do well. The tour, Gary was implementing a lot of those songs that we hadn't heard in a long time.
Mm-hmm. And Chris and I had just gone to see Kiss before that. Now, do you remember the concert we saw with Kiss was in 3D?
Oh yeah, that was the Psycho Circus tour, right?
The Psycho Circus, that's it.
Yeah, his tongue and all this stuff. It was insane.
Oh gosh, and that was great because White Zombie opened for him. That was my first taste of Rob Zombie, and I was like, okay, I can handle this guy too.
That's cool, man. That's cool, guys. Thanks. This was great. I could always talk Van Halen. So anytime somebody wants to talk Van Halen, and congrats on the book, phenomenal book. It's out now, so let's plug it. People can get it wherever you buy your favorite books, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, sir.
Any websites, social media, anything that you want to get out there for people? That
Absolutely. JimSerger.com, Facebook, Jim Serger, anywhere, even yours right there, Eric. Anything to talk about Van Halen. We got to keep it alive. You got to keep it fresh. We're all getting older. We are. And my generation has been through it. We love it. That's why we're on this. But my daughter likes Van Halen, and I need to keep her age engaged. Yeah. So she can change her generation's kids and keep them going as well. There's so much history with this. It's unbelievable. So
we got Wolfie. Wolfie's carrying
exactly. He'll be here 2 times in Cincinnati next year.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm seeing him.
Yeah, I got to see him in Connecticut, and I got the goosebumps because he has the EVH guitar, and he was doing the stuff on the fretboard.
Right.
He's opening for Foo Fighters here in the stadium tour, so we're going to that.
Yeah.
And Eric, speaking of goosebumps, Chris told me to watch a video of his or something. So I looked it up. The whole video is just him and Eddie. I don't know what song it is, but it's him as a baby.
Yeah, Distance.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that video just chills you, especially with Eddie.
Yes.
On.
You guys probably remember. I remember when Wolfgang was born, March 16th.
Right.
What the hell kind of name is Wolfgang?
Right. And then the years go on, and I remember Eddie at the '96 MTV Awards with Dave, and he said, "Hi, Wolfie." He was just a kid. You see him grow up, and then credit to him, man. He put off his career because he was with his dad.
Yeah.
Jim Serger, Chris Berger, Todd Zimmerman, guys, thanks so much.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Eric.
Right.
Thank you.
That's it. It's in the books.